Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Olena Berezovska. I continue my podcast with the most wonderful people of the world, specialists in psychology, and not just psychology, like doctors, researchers, scientists. And today I have a special guest from the United States, Robin Johnson. Welcome.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great to be here.
I'm so surprised that it's 6 a.m. at your
Yes.
side, at Pacific time. And you agreed to have a podcast with me, and when we have 9 in the morning, 9 a.m. So I really appreciate that you were up so early, and it's a pleasure. I would like to introduce you, Robin, and tell about her a little bit more. Robin has extensive experience in positive psychology, and she created her own Robin learning system, which we're going to talk about. Also, she has a master in applied positive psychology from University of Pennsylvania. And when we were talking about topics we would like to discuss, we found that we have a lot of common interests. And I don't know, we are gonna talk about everything we would like to discuss today, but it's a wonderful opportunity to meet again and have another podcast. So, Robin, I would like to tell me and my viewers a little bit more about this Robin learning system you created, and also about your experience.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. And I actually prefer early morning events because then you're not doing anything. You don't have other meetings planned. And so for me, early morning is really great. And so I just feel honored to be invited to be a guest on your program. And how I phrase Robin Learning Systems, I phrase it by saying, I help organizations create workplaces where people want to stay instead of wanting to leave, and creating workplaces that are humane, ethical, and resilient. And I got my master's in applied positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, as you mentioned. Thank you so much. I was actually part of the COVID class of 2020. Our program started it's a year-long program, started in September 2019. About every 3 weeks, I would fly from Los Angeles back to Philadelphia in Pennsylvania for a very long weekend, and then doing lots of distance learning in between. So we flew back beginning of March, and then kiss, kiss, hug, hug. We'll see you at the end of March.
Yeah.
Middle of March, no. So we finished by graduating online. We did finally have the live graduation in May of 2022. So actually it's been a year ago. I can't believe it's been a year ago. We did have a live graduation. At any rate, so studying applied positive psychology, and I'll explain just a little bit of the difference between what we reference as traditional psychology and positive psychology. And traditional psychology, you can think of it as pulling weeds in a garden. Yeah. And let's diminish or get rid of anxiety, depression, suicide, etc. And that is absolutely important, very critical, that you pull these weeds. But you could pull all the weeds on a patch of ground, and then you'd end up with just a patch of ground.
Mm-hmm.
In order to have a garden, you have to also plant seeds and water them and nourish them until they grow up into a beautiful garden. And so that's what I refer to as positive psychology. It's a process of planting good seeds in your life, nourishing them, the right seeds in the right soil, all the right conditions, until you have this beautiful garden. And you absolutely still need to pull weeds. I grew up in Boise, Idaho, on a big piece of property and had to pull weeds. And so even if you have a garden, you're still pulling weeds. That's very important. But the more good seeds, the more good plants you have growing, the less room you have for weeds to grow. And so that's how I like to think of positive psychology, the process of, planting seeds and then pulling the little weeds as they come up. And yeah, go ahead.
Can I interrupt you? Because when you say about the garden and the seeds, I'm telling you, I'm like start trembling because I had a very meaningful dream many years ago when I was going through difficult time in my life, and I was disappointed. And I had a dream, like old guy, like wise guy, brought me to the garden with the soil, and he says there's a seed. So every seed represents something important. This is love. This is like, resilience. This is something else. So he said, you have to plant your garden and it will be beautiful. But remember that among the seeds, you can find bad one. And then you have like weeds, right? So you have to kind of pull them out. So the more you work on your garden, the more beautiful it will be. So when you say this, oh my God, it's amazing that actually we have connection in this interpretation and meaning of garden in positive your sides and your strengths and your weakness. So thank you very much for bringing this.
What's interesting is there are a lot of theories about what makes a good life and how can people achieve a good life. And the question is, well, what theories are true? Freud, for example, had lots of theories, but most of his theories have proven to be false because they were not based in evidence. He should be honored in the sense that he was willing to say, hey, there's things going on in our childhood that might affect us in adulthood, but a lot of his theories were just incorrect. So the question is, how do you know? And I like the phrase, the proof of the pudding lies in the tasting. And so you try a recipe, and does it taste good? Does it work? And what we know about positive psychology is that the principles underlying positive psychology have been very well researched, very well studied, very highly vetted, you might say. And so we know that they work. And one of the most well-known and well-documented theories was created by Martin Seligman. He's known as the father of positive psychology. And added to by one of his students, Michelle McQuaid, but it goes by the acronym PERMA, P-E-R-M-A-H. Michelle added the H, stands for positive emotions, engagement. Are you doing things that are interesting to you? Relationships, meaning, do you have purpose in life? Achievement, are you able to accomplish things that you feel good about? And then health. Michelle added the health. Psychology tends to be, from the head up, but we know that our physical bodies impact how we think and how we feel. And so, this theory of positive psychology, PERMA, and there have been other ones added as well, other theories as well. We know that these work because people have tried them, and then we studied them, and does it bring forth good fruit in your life?
Yeah, it's scientifically proven. And when you actually mention about this recipe and like life pie, I call it like usually life cake, it's your life. And I say, we have some pieces of cake and each piece represents some part of your life. Let's say spiritual piece, this is family piece, this is career piece, this is relation and other. So I usually say, you have to understand what pieces plays the biggest one in this cake, and other pieces could be the smallest one. So what would you like to improve? The smallest one and make it equal, or you want to concentrate on something different, on bigger piece and make it even bigger? And this is we have, like you see, we have this kind of vibration. We have resonation, like, and it's good because the most people, they do not understand it. They try to look at the life but separately, like, not like a whole cake. And the PERMA, actually, I know because I was taking courses from University of Pennsylvania and from Dr. Salomon as well. And they teach us to look at the person as a whole, find out not just weakness, but the strengths. First of all, the strengths of the person. And I look at your Robin learning system, and I see you divided, like you said, resilient organization and resilient human being. So you not often we can see the coach, the speaker, the trainer who divides these two parts. I would like to bring another question. We were talking about psychological state and mental state. Is there any difference?
Well, that's interesting, psychological versus mental. You know, I honestly don't know. I think sometimes people use those words interchangeably.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they're interchangeable, and even if you were to separate them out, they definitely influence each other. One of the interesting things about this theory of PERMA, P-E-R-M-A-H,
Mm-hmm.
is, and well-being in general, is that these letters are not like they're letters nailed to the wall where they're just static. Instead, I like another metaphor. I tend to think in metaphors. I like to think of each one of those letters sitting on a buoy out in the ocean. And each of them are floating and moving up and down with the waves of the ocean. And what's interesting about a buoy system, because I actually use this analogy in one of my presentations, I never looked up buoys. I said, oh, I'll look up what's a buoy. How do they write? Well, in reality, a buoy isn't just sitting out by itself in the ocean. It's connected to a whole bunch of buoys all up and down the coast. And those buoys connect to each other, sending signals to each other, and they send signals to the people on land and the people out in the water. And so you can think about, okay, positive emotions. And so these letters, P-E-R-M-A-H, these concepts, they can give us information about how are we doing. For example, if we don't have very many positive emotions, we're feeling really down in the dumps. Well, what can you do? Well, maybe you need to, look at the health. Maybe you need to, take a nap. Maybe you need to eat lunch. Maybe you need to go exercise. Or maybe there's something in your relationships that are awry that you need to, do some apologies or change your behavior in some way. So once again, all of these letters, all of these elements of our life are like buoys on the ocean, and they can be sending us information. And the other thing too, and I liked how you mentioned about the cake, that one area really big, one area might be really small. Do we want them all equal? And the notion isn't that they could be all equal. That'd be great. But the notion also is that if one is way out of balance, like for example, someone who just loves meaning and they're really focused on meaning, but they focus on it so much that they crowd out other areas, or they're focused on accomplishment and they're so busy accomplishing things that they aren't taking time for their health, or they aren't taking time for their relationships. So that's another way of looking at it, is are these things in balance?
We have now a lot of like childless pairs, couples, and not because they have problem with infertility, just it's a choice, right? And I found like people want to accommodate everyone into one model and do not accept that we can have different pies, different pieces of pie, like different size, right? So if the family does not play too much role in our life, that's okay. If we actually concentrate in attention on maternity, on parenthood, it's another story. And it comes to everything. It's not just coming like to family or work. It comes to spirituality. It comes to relationship with people. So we have to find ourselves what actually important in our life. And as it's true that the pies cannot be equal, the pieces in pie cannot be equal because we are different. But if we know ourselves, we can improve the sizes of the pieces without distortion, without destroying entire pie and feel uncomfortable because we try to achieve something, but then we ruin entire pie and never enjoy it. It's another question. We have to enjoy it. We have to enjoy it every piece, and be happy that we live, that we have love, because when the life is coming to the end, many people have regrets that they didn't do this, didn't do that. And it's sad that it comes at the end of the life, not when we live at present. And that's why I like your this examples you brought with pie. And when we bring in these examples, actually, it's much easier for people to understand what we're talking about.
Let me throw one thing. The other thing also is keep in mind is we have different phases of life, and so sometimes you are going to be out of balance for a period of time. For example, when I was getting my master's degree, my life was way out of balance. In fact, we joked about the fact that
true.
that our well-being, our physical well-being actually went down during this program because you are so busy. You're working, you have your regular life, and then you're getting a master's degree, staying up all night writing these papers. I cannot tell you how many bottles of Dr. Pepper I drank during that program. And so, or like say parents of young children, if you're or like a mother of a newborn, I mean, that just the utter bone deep
different world.
Yeah. And so these periods of time where you will be out of balance. So try to, find balance in a few little ways, or try to do things in a few little ways, but just know that that there'll be seasons and then they will pass, and then there'll be another season. But I want to keep in mind that you're not always going to have everything in balance. But when you see something's way out of kilter, can you do some adjustments, to help a little bit?
It's true that we have absolutely different perception of life and everything what's going on in our life through the age and through some periods like pregnancy, and then little children, and then our diseases and loss of friends. And it's important to understand that we cannot be all the time the same, and look at the events that happen in our life the same way, like we look like 20 years when we were 20 years young. Today in the morning, I got a message from my dear friend. She lives in Pacific part of Canada, because she lost her job a couple months ago, and she tried to find a job and she couldn't. And today she was really frustrated because she's like, I need money, I need this. And really, I could see like she's tense. And I was talking to her, and I was saying exactly the same I would say to any person, that life is not a permanent, life is temporary, and all bad things temporary and good things temporary. So what happened to you in a couple months, you will be happy, you'll find your job. I understand your feelings, but you have friends, you had me, you had other people that would help you. Don't worry, you're not gonna stay without money because you're a good person, you made a connection, you made a relationship. So we would help you. But I said that's the most important to understand, that even bad things are temporary, not permanent. And that's why it's true that during different periods of life, we have a different meaning of things and events that happen in our life. And also we know ourselves better and better and better, even know actually what makes comfort in our life, when we are comfortable. And this is important to understand. So I bring in us the meaning of spirituality in positive psychology. I can tell my viewers, and many of you would be surprised, that positive psychology does not deny spirituality, even religion and beliefs, which is good because it plays a huge part in somebody's life. And that's we decided to talk a little bit about spirituality and positive psychology. And I know that Robin has experience and knowledge in this part of positive psychology. So please tell us a little bit more about this topic.
Yes, absolutely. I am absolutely a person of faith, and I did my capstone on the overlap between religion in general, and then my faith tradition in particular, and well-being / positive psychology. There is a massive overlap. And in fact, one of the core sources that I used was, it's right on the bookshelf right behind me there, How God Changes Your Brain? But it's written by a medical doctor looking at what is the impact on our health of being having an active faith tradition. And he said, there is so much evidence of how being actively engaged in religion impacts your life, that he's shocked that the medical community doesn't stand up and overtly take notice of this. It's just so much evidence. And in fact, at the International Positive Psychology Association World Congress in 2021, I gave a very tiny 3-minute presentation. In fact, you can find it online. It's on YouTube now, but it's called Want Happiness, Well-Being, and Longevity? Eat your veggies and go to church. And in one of the studies, they looked at what is the physical on our health going to church compared to other health practices like exercising, eating your vegetables, statin therapy, etc. And so they looked at 25 different health practices, looking at it and longevity, and then compared that going to church. And they found that going to church on a regular basis was more effective than 60% of the various practices, and it was equally effective to eating fruits and vegetables. And so anyway, you can find my you can also find my capstone on that I uploaded to the Scholarly Commons at University of Pennsylvania, and there's just massive evidence, so much evidence on the interplay between spirituality and well-being, and so much so that a new division called the Spirituality and Meaning Division is now part of the International Positive Psychology Association. They have a division on education, they have a division on clinical psychology, they have a division on work and organizations. Well, a couple of years ago, they started a new division on spirituality and meaning. And so it's huge, it's massive.
When you mentioned church, I will tell you something about myself, because I was brought up as a atheist, but not just even like atheist. The subject of God never was mentioned in my family, because we live in the Soviet Union. It was part of culture. Do not talk about God, religion. And I'm actually thankful to my parents that they never forced me to believe in something, that God exists or God doesn't exist. And at the same time, my grandma, she was very religious and very spiritual person, very. And it's interesting, like when probably 10 years ago, when I was going to the church and I was helping the church, because we were doing some events, created like art shows, helping people to collect money for poor. I like to help people. And I had a conversation with the priest, and I was given a lecture about symbols in church, in a religion, that affects your senses. So I use science, and I use actually all the symbols, colors, and meanings. And the priest was just shocked, because I could explain why church has different colors through the seasons, how the structure of the building can affect us, the voice, the singing, the different mudras, icons, whatever. So I'm actually explained it from scientific point of view, because we have sense can affect our eyes, our ears, our nose, like smell. That's why I said, if we look at the church and meaning of beliefs, of religion, not the bad part, not like, abusing our brain with false theories. But if we start looking differently, then we understand why people go to church and how actually affect them, why they become calm, why they put aside all these bad things and bad thoughts. And it's important. I was taking the very complicated, tough course from Cambridge University about neuroscience, especially measuring our brain activity when we have different emotions. And now we can do it through not just one test like encephalography, for example, electrical encephalography. No, we can do through MRI and many other new techniques and methods to measure our brain when we think about something, when we feel something, when we have emotion, positive and negative, and we can see what part of the brain reacts and how it reacts, if it's reality or even if it's virtual signal. And that's amazing because we know that our brain reacts on a real signals and on virtual signals we created by our thinking, because we can cry just because we're thinking about something, not just like, having a real event that affects our mind. And that's why I mentioned this, because what you said, that spirituality, religion plays a huge part in somebody's life and people's life. Like, there are a lot of people who believe in God, or who believe in many gods, doesn't matter, or who say we don't believe in God, but we believe in universe, or we believe in nature, or we believe in something else that has meaning for these people. And we cannot deny this. And we cannot say that, no, you have to believe only in God, but don't believe in universe or this universal brain or whatever, or universal mind.
There's a great quote. In fact, I have Marty's latest book right here sitting in front of me. The Hope Circuit. This is Marty's autobiography, and in the very last chapter, right before the end, toward the end of the book, he talks about what's called the Hope Circuit, and that they've discovered it's a pathway in your brain that helps you have hope as opposed to having despair. At any rate, really fascinating science stuff. But in there, he included a quote he attributed to Matthew White, who is in Australia and over at the University of Adelaide and over the positive education. But he said, science and religion are opposed, but only in the sense that my thumb and my finger are opposed. And between the two of them, we can grasp everything. So we have science, we have religion, and that's how we can grasp everything. I thought that was really beautiful.
It's a beautiful explanation. I like it. I'm going to read this book because I had no chance to order, but I'm going to order and read this book. I'm now listening he created a free course, Positive Psychology for Ukrainians, to support them in war. And he brought the best psychologists, the best speakers to this course. And I'm enjoying every lecture he gives. And it's 12 weeks course, free for everyone. Yeah, and then translated in Ukrainian, which is so amazing. And this is how positive psychologists are helping other people to survive and to be happy and see the meaning even under very extreme conditions, circumstances, and which is really good. Our time is coming to the end. Yes. And Robin, I'm so happy that you came to this podcast. And I know there's another topic we would like to discuss in other podcasts. It's about psychological safety, which is very serious and very important topic, and psychological abuse. And I know you have experience, you have knowledge in this topic. So I'll see you next time. And thank you again for coming so early at your time to this podcast. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful honor and a pleasure, and to getting to know you and getting to be part of your audience and a part of your work. So congratulations and thank you to you as well.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm so amazed. Everyone is unique. I'm telling you, and you're unique too. And you see how we're vibrating. We're just like,
Yeah.
we have a lot of common, and we understand each other quite well. One person told me, she put in her kind of information about herself, I teach people how to live. I said, you cannot teach people how to live. It's their own life. If somebody would tell me that, you know, I'm not going to deal with such person who's going to teach me how to live. It's my life. I decide how to live, right?
Exactly. Thank you so much. Good to
And
talk to you.
thank you too. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.